wants to make a sourdough starter. Some of you have been asking me if I can do a step-by-step like sourdough for dummies, ultimately walkthrough of exactly how to create a starter from scratch. So let's do it. There's only a couple things that you're gonna need to create a sourdough starter, and that is essentially flour and water. And a jar, of course, you need a jar. So this is my sourdough starter. She is a year old. She's the only one I've ever created actually, so this is gonna be fun for me too. And this is Cinderella. She is a year old this month actually. So all you need is a jar. You can use a mason jar with the screw-on lid like this, which is what I'm gonna be using. This one is 500 milliliters, which is 16 ounces. If you don't have a mason jar, you can use something as simple as an old pasta jar, as long as it's thoroughly rinsed out, or any kind of glass jar from food, as long as it's thoroughly rinsed out, washed properly, and it doesn't have any smell of what used to be in there. The other option is something like this, or something with a hinged lid. A hinged lid would work as well, a glass jar with a hinged lid. All of these jars are from the dollar store. And that is all that you need. If you don't even have that right now and you want to start right now with me, you can use something as simple as a drinking glass, as long as it has something solid to sit on top. It doesn't have to fit properly, but it needs to be able to sit on top and cover up majority of the air. Let's get started. So we need equal parts by weight, not by volume, but equal parts weight of flour and water. We are going to use 50 grams. So 50 grams of flour, 50 grams of water. I am using a scale, a digital scale. If you don't have a scale, I do highly recommend getting one. It just makes things so much easier to make sure that you have the exact amount of weight of flour and water. I have a scale linked on my Amazon store if you want to grab one there. You can also grab one at Walmart, wherever. You can get a scale for under $15 and they last a really long time. Okay, so then we're gonna zero out our scale so it's completely zero. We are going to add 50 grams of flour and 50 grams of water. Now with your flour, you want it to be unbleached. We don't want to be putting those bleach chemicals into our starter. It can affect the way the starter actually gets established. I am using unbleached all-purpose flour. You can also use bread flour. There's a variety of different flours that you can use. This is what I have right now. I don't have bread flour at the moment, so I am using unbleached all-purpose flour. And this is a really big measuring cup. We're gonna get a smaller one. Cup measure will fit in there better. Put in 50 grams of flour. And then we're going to reset our scale to 0 again, and we're going to add 50 grams. This is room temperature filtered water. Room temperature water is going to be easier for your flour and your water to start cultivating that bacteria, rather than if you were to use cold water. You can use bottled water. If you live somewhere where you have perfectly clean tap water, that's totally fine. Just leave it out overnight so that it is room temperature. Okay, 50 grams. Okay, perfect. 50 grams, spot on. And then we are going to stir that in and mix it up with a spatula. I'm gonna use the smaller end of this rubber spatula. You could also use a wooden spoon. You could use the handle of the wooden spoon. You could use a kid's knife or spoon, anything kind of plastic or rubber. So I'm gonna use the smaller end of this spatula, and we are going to mix this flour and water completely together. So as you're learning right now, in case you didn't already know, a sourdough starter is simply flour and water. But over time, it will actually start to create healthy bacteria. Healthy bacteria and healthy yeast will form with that flour and water. So we're gonna mix it together. We want it to be a thick pancake batter consistency. And we're gonna scrape the edges and get all of this flour and water. I'm not gonna call it starter yet, but all of this flour and water mixed together. We're scraping the edges down entirely as we're going around here. And we're going to let it sit for 24 hours. So this is a feed every single day thing. This is like taking care of a child, okay? Once you have your sourdough starter going, it has to be cared for. My family last year, they ended up making 4 starters. The kids, 9 and 12 last year, ended up eventually completely neglecting their starters. And well, if you don't feed it, it dies. So it has to be fed, it has to be taken care of. What's really exciting though, is that within the next 2 weeks of you starting your own starter, you're going to be able to start baking with it. And when that happens, it's really, really exciting because you can start reducing your store-bought items and you can turn to more of a homemade approach. And there's so much that you can make with a sourdough starter. It's really, really amazing. So this is going to sit for 24 hours, and in 24 hours, we're gonna come and look at it. So exciting now is that we need to name these. So this is Cinderella, and now we need to come up with a name for this one. So I'm gonna see what I can come up with overnight. If you have ideas for this new starter that we're making together, please drop them in the comments. I would love to get some names out there. And then the one that you are making at home, we need to name that one as well. So come up with a name for yours. Drop the name of yours that you've decided into the comments. I wanna see what you're naming yours. And I'm excited to see how this goes over the next couple weeks. So now that it's ready to go, it's all done, it's all mixed in together, we need to put the lid on it. But when our starter is on the counter, because gases will start to form, we want to make sure that the lid is on very loosely so that those gases can escape. Otherwise, what can happen is the jar can literally explode. So we are simply going to sit the lid right on top. You could screw it on extremely loosely, like give it just not even a quarter turn, or I'm not even gonna do that. I'm just going to sit mine right on top very, very loosely, and we'll leave it like that on the counter, and we'll come back and check on it tomorrow.